I think the concern that I have is that people seem to think that if you suggest that life is ambiguous, or if that reality has various kinds of ambiguity that culture then covers over and people dogmatically cling to those cultural beliefs. I think people too easily sandbag this. They hear it as if I'm suggesting that uncertainty and indetermination and people are not going to know what to do because it's too ambiguous. No, the problem is that they proceed despite the ambiguity. That's the problem. And I want to give some concrete examples here of what I mean by life or reality being ambiguous. I'm not talking necessarily about suffering. Suffering is an interesting issue. We can get at, are there ambiguities in the question of how we come to try to alleviate suffering? When we actually, factually try to reduce and lessen the world's suffering, there will be ambiguities. We'll get to that. Let's start with some more mundane, close to home, this here right now. When I'm talking about this here right now, I'm talking about you and me in this discussion, in this YouTube environment, whatever this is. I would say there's one major ambiguity that I think we've all already seen. It's that, and I shot a video here, it's on the attention factor by Idries Shah, it's part of the beliefs of Sufism. It's that people, when they're interacting, are partly motivated by different drives. There is at least the drive of attention. Now, despite any attempt to convey information, despite any attempt to give philosophical insight and to share ideas with one another, there is a sense in which people are also ambiguously seeking attention. They're giving attention, they're being, attended to and wanting to be attended to. And if someone tries to deny and say, well, there really is no attention factor, there's just two people standing there and they're just giving information, you can think that. I think that the case is more ambiguous than that. I think if most of us want to be honest about it, I think we would admit that situations, philosophical discussions, I think we witnessed it here for the last several days, are fraught with kinds of ambiguities where you're not sure exactly why people are arguing as they are arguing. Are they trying to advance ideas? Are they in a bad mood from something else that happened in their personal life? Are they simply trying to seek attention? Do they want to be seen in a certain way? Is that what it's about? That would just be one very simple case of when people interact, there are ambiguities as to why they're exchanging the ideas, why they're interacting. Let's take a much bigger case. I think the video by Elaine de Botton, if people have seen that, it's in my favorites. It was a TED video. And I would say, de Botton is a kind of contemporary neo-Stoic. He's trying to develop a philosophy of happiness that helps people alleviate their sense of suffering. The degree to which there's other kinds of pains than physical pains, psychological pains, emotional pains, pains of neglect or isolation. They're not just fork in the eye or a burning leg. What he would suggest, and I think this is right-minded, is that we want to be able to address some of the deep, deep ambiguities that are part of life that amount for why some people have a higher station or a lower station than other people. When you look at someone and you ask, why do they have the life they have? Why do they have the career they have? How did they get that job? How did they get that spouse? How did they get where they're at? I think the myth out there is that people are self-fashioned and people choose themselves, and because people are hardworking and other people aren't, well, people get what they deserve. That's a nice story. I think people like to tell that story, but there's also a much more ambiguous fact, which is much of what happens is luck. It's happenstance. It's complete luck. Some people, it's the parents they were born into. They happen to have a couple of rich relatives, and that just set their trajectory. Other people, they were working really hard on their way into a great life, and a drunk driver swerved and killed them. Yes, so much of life is happenstance and luck and good fortune and things that are completely out of your control. Now, just because so much is completely out of your control, that doesn't mean that some people didn't work really hard to get to where they're at. You know what I'm trying to suggest? Come on, let's do the refrain. It's ambiguous. Can we not see it? How can you not see it? It's ambiguous. It's not very clear. We like to pretend it's clear. We like to pretend that either it's all luck, it's all just happenstance, or people deserve what they get because they worked hard for it. No, I think it could be both of those and neither of those, because the truth is it's ambiguous. The courageous way to alleviate suffering is to work hard, to work as hard as you can, to try to make a great contribution to life, and know that despite all of your best effort, that's a lot that's outside of your control. I think most people can't handle that. I think that kind of ambiguity most people can't handle, and they flee from it, and what they do is they dogmatically say, well, hell, either I'm a self-made person and I deserve what I get, and who cares about those people in lower stations than me, because if I drive a fancy car and they're a street sweeper, I'm better than them. Or they go, hell, why try? It's all just luck anyway. It's just happenstance. Who knows what's going to happen to you? Many people struggle psychologically with the complex ambiguity of life. That is, they bring unnecessary suffering to themselves because they seem not to recognize that life is ambiguous, and it demands contradictory attitudes. It demands the capacity to strive hard to try to accomplish things, to set goals, and to diligently work on those, and yet to fully realize that so much of what happens, so much of how people end up where they are, and what kind of life they end up living, so much of it turns out to be luck. Some people get hit by lightning bolts. I mean, this really happens. Um, some people, they get the job because that particular boss hired them that day. It's really amazing to try to handle the ambiguity of those two tensions. I think many people, when they heard even de Botton talk about his work, people seemed, I watched the comments, people polarized around it. You could see the denial of ambiguity in the way the comments sort of flocked around his video. People either want to say, look, you're self-made, or they want to go, yeah, you're right, it's all just happenstance and luck. I think it's both. And I think there is suffering that comes from people who do not realize the ambiguity. Not only is there all these mental anguish and emotional anguish things that people bring upon themselves from not being able to do this, but the larger theory, and this is one that, it would take us much longer to do in a video, but I'll try to see what I can do here in a quick minute, is to say that oftentimes people who don't become aware of the fact that they're submitting to an authoritative disambiguation, that is a person who fully submits to cultural blinders without realizing that the blinders are on there, they become potentially very dangerous. This is the suicide bomber. This is the person who is willing to go kill the other to prove that their view must be correct. There's a long, long history of scapegoating that is a venting of repressed recognition of the potential arbitrariness and ambiguity of life. And the person can't handle the fact that it's ambiguous. They know that they've lived a life according to a certain order, and now, once their entire life's identity is invested in that order, to discover that other orders are equally true, it's so emotionally riling that some people, they lash out with the urge to kill another who is that different from them. Keep your eye on it. If you don't think it's true, be very careful. People who can't handle ambiguity, you may be their next scapegoat. Thanks.